Saitama is dazed and bruised, laid out against the wall. Concrete and plaster are cracked all around him. It's the most damaged and wounded he's ever been in a fight, ever. And the strangest part is, he hasn't even been attacked. How did this happen? We need to go back a week earlier. Saitama's time as an employee of the SCP Foundation had already been extremely eventful. He'd battled and destroyed some of the most dangerous anomalies the Foundation had to offer, like SCP-682 and SCP-096. He helped fight off legions of enemies from everything from the Blood Pond to the Sarkists, all of which, surprise surprise, he managed to destroy in one punch. He'd made one very persistent enemy though, SCP-076, Abel. Abel is a real warrior's warrior, a blood knight who lives to battle. Nothing thrills him more than a true battle against a genuinely challenging opponent. But the problem with Saitama is that he's so much more powerful than Abel that he only ever manages to last a single punch, which doesn't make it all that fun for Abel. Unlike most of the opponents that Saitama faces, Abel is cursed with a horrible fate. He is to resurrect inside his giant stone sarcophagus every time he dies, and he remembers every detail of all of his former lives. This has resulted in an unprecedented buildup of rage and humiliation in Abel's twisted, ancient soul. This has led to more frequent resurrections and escape attempts from Abel. When Saitama wasn't there to help, it inevitably resulted in a large number of personnel being killed, as well as millions in damage to Foundation property. Something needed to be done, so Foundation psychological experts decided to do something they hadn't done in a long time. Ask his brother for advice on what to do. Cain is one of the more mysterious humanoid anomalies out there. A kind and gentle man of Middle Eastern descent, who by all accounts seems relatively normal, aside from the fact that his limbs are all metal prosthetics and he's got a strange marking on his forehead. But that's not all. He's got a variety of anomalous effects that, despite his friendly nature, make him a potentially dangerous force if ever released into the world. One of the most important ones is that Cain's presence causes any plant matter, or its derivatives, including paper and wood, to die and decay upon contact, while he doesn't mean any harm. Releasing Cain could accidentally result in a widespread ecological disaster that would have horrifying consequences for everything on Earth. He also has another notable anomalous quality, but we'll get to that last one later. Foundation psychologists approached Cain on his lunch break and asked him whether he'd been able to talk some sense into his estranged brother. Cain just laughed when he heard that. "Clearly you're not thinking straight," he said. "Abel hates me more than anyone in the world." The psychologist in question gave an uneasy tilt of the head. "Actually, I think there might be someone now that he hates even more." After clearing the relevant protocols with administration, Cain was brought down into Abel's containment chamber. It only took a few hours of waiting before the next rage-fueled resurrection began. The lid opened, and the ancient warrior jumped out, a sword in each hand. "Hello again, brother," Cain said. "Silence, you treacherous dog," Abel barked. "I have no interest in you. My quarrel is with the fist that turned against God." That raised an eyebrow from Cain. It'd been a while since he'd encountered anyone with such a lofty moniker, reminding him of the biblical old days, when everyone had a title. "He slaughters me again and again," Abel said, "like some mere insect. He doesn't give me the respect I am due." "Perhaps I can talk some sense into this man, if you let me." "Never! Saitama is mine, you wretch." Unable to contain his fury any longer, Abel charged both swords aloft and stabbed his brother in the heart. Cain winced in pain as Abel fell dead on the floor. His body turned to ash, reforming inert in the belly of the sarcophagus again. Oh, that's Cain's other power, by the way. He's functionally immortal, capable of feeling the pain of any blows used against him, but the actual damage of the attack will be mirrored back onto his attacker. That's why when his brother Abel tried to strike him down in a fit of rage, Abel perished instead of Cain. But in death, yet again, he'd given Cain plenty to think about. "Saitama, that is someone I'd be eager to talk to," he said to no one but himself. Speaking of Saitama, his sterling record of success as a Foundation agent had won him some friends in high places. Senior researchers like Dr. Clef, Dr. Gears, and Dr. Crow, who was a talking dog by the way, all lined up to thank him for the good work he'd been doing in helping them contain and neutralizing some challenging anomalies. But every thanks from the SCP Foundation always comes with strings attached. In this case, those strings involved consenting to a series of new cross-tests with a different set of anomalies. They hoped to test the parameters of their interactions with him, and yield some interesting new data about his power in the process. He was practically becoming the Foundation's new SCP-682, except with a much better attitude. The first test was between Saitama and SCP-049, the Plague Doctor. The anomalous medical man was instructed to enter the chamber and touch Saitama, a touch that for any other human would result in instant death. However, when the Plague Doctor touched the Caped Baldy, there was no effect. Well, other than Saitama feeling a little uncomfortable that this weird guy had turned up and touched him. When later questioned about the incident, SCP-049 said, "He was the healthiest specimen that I had ever seen." Next came SCP-082, the freakish giant known as Ferdinand the Cannibal. He was instructed to go into the chamber and do his worst to Saitama. He was told the Foundation wouldn't impose any consequences on him for his actions this time. He immediately walked into the chamber and tried to bite off Saitama's head, but in the process, he just broke all of his teeth. It was like a regular person biting into a brick. After this humiliation, Ferdinand left the room, requesting immediate dental assistance. Then, of course, there was SCP-136, the Naked Doll. The inert rag doll was placed in a chair across from Saitama, and everyone in attendance waited for the anomaly to start manifesting. Soon enough, the horrifying naked figure emerged and started floating towards Saitama, grinning its terrible grin, until Saitama evaporated it with a single punch so hard that even the doll itself exploded into stuffing. That's another anomaly they can count as neutralized. He was also asked to walk into the bladed feathers of SCP-469, the many-winged angel. For a normal human being, this would mean an agonizingly painful death, as the razor-sharp feathers shredded their bodies and burned their nerves. But about 10 seconds after walking into the wings of the monster, Saitama exploded it into a puff of feathers with a single punch. Yet another anomaly for the dead count. After that came SCP-2800, Cactus Man. This one wasn't actually a combat test. As an aspiring superhero himself, Cactus Man actually had a lot of admiration for Saitama and asked him for an autograph. They also took a selfie together, which Cactus Man was forbidden from posting anywhere for obvious reasons. With that little reprieve out of the way, they returned to another offensive test, putting Saitama against a gaggle of SCP-3199, humans refuted. These horrific monsters were durable, terrifying, and highly reproductive, until they ran into Saitama. As expected, it only took him one punch each to blow them all away, including the leathery eggs inside them. It was a problem whose solution had eluded the Foundation ever since they first discovered SCP-3199. But it wasn't just living SCPs they tested on Saitama. One of the more surprising tests was SCP-123, the miniature black hole. Despite its immense gravitational pull, Saitama was completely unmoved by its force. Much like a certain McCavity, he defied the law of gravity. He was also shown a drawing of SCP-1128, the aquatic horror, thus activating its anomalous effect and immediately putting him at risk. As part of the experiment, Foundation researchers also poured out a puddle of water on the floor and instructed Saitama to stand in it. Soon enough, as they could expect from this anomaly, he was pulled down into the puddle and disappeared. About half an hour later, Saitama crawled back out of the puddle, untouched. The puddle slowly became tinted red, hinting at the grim fate of the giant killer fish that was still floating down there in that watery pocket dimension. Next was SCP-053, also known as the Young Girl. This anomaly is capable of causing violent aggression in anyone around her by mere passive exposure. But if they try to attack her while in its throes of this aggression, they'll instantly die of a heart attack right there on the spot. With Saitama, however, there didn't seem to be any psychological effect. The hero for fun just waited in the chamber with the little girl for 20 minutes before speaking out and saying, "Hey, can we call this one off, guys? This just kind of feels weird." The request was granted, though things got weird again afterwards. When the Foundation made Saitama hold SCP-734, the baby, whose skin produces a deadly substance that causes organic matter to decay. But to Saitama, SCP-734 was just another baby. He gave it back soon afterwards. In absolute contrast to the baby, he also faced off against the ancient baby-eating witch known as Baba Yaga, or SCP-352. Foundation staff members had long since learned to fear the deadly hallucinogenic strands of fiber that the witch used to ensnare and devour her prey. But Saitama brushed those strands away like Halloween fake cobwebs and punched her into a Slavic smear on the nearby wall. And of course, they put him up against SCP-073, the immortal Hitler clone. In truth, they didn't expect to uncover groundbreaking insights about Saitama's abilities from this particular cross-test, but the real reason, let's just say it was less about science and more about entertainment. They thought it would be extremely funny to see One Punch Man use his superlative strength to punch out Hitler in a way Captain America never could. And they were right. It was very funny. It had been a rigorous day of testing. Not that Saitama really felt the results of that rigor. For him, it had mainly been kind of a boring day, and had kept him from a rerun of a show on TV that he felt extremely nostalgic about. And as for the data that the Foundation researchers gathered, the results were consistent with what they had before. This One Punch Man was an unspeakably strong individual, and seemingly completely immune to the anomalous effects of a wide variety of different, otherwise highly dangerous entities and objects. Just when the researchers were wondering if there was a way to put Saitama up against the Scarlet King, another man entered the testing chambers. A Middle Eastern man with metal limbs and a strange symbol on his forehead. "Hello," Cain said. "I assume you're Saitama. I've heard you're strong." "Oh, that's neat," Saitama said, not too bothered by it all. "Who told you?" "My brother Abel. Tall man, tattooed with a penchant for blades." Saitama's eyes widened in recognition. "That guy's your brother? Man, he's got absolutely no chill," he said. Cain nodded and smiled. "That I know. Now show me how hard you can punch." Back in the observation room, the researchers were nervous and fascinated. There was no way to predict how Saitama and Cain's particular anomalous abilities would interact, and this gave rise to a kind of morbid curiosity. How exactly would this shake out? Saitama thought it was a little weird that this guy wanted to get punched without even fighting back. But who was he to deny a quadruple amputee his request? Saitama rolled his shoulders and prepared for a punch. A normal punch would probably do it for this guy. He didn't want to blow the poor fellow away too hard. Cain, for his part, was unmoved. He stood politely with a smile on his face, waiting for the punch that had apparently put his brother back into his coffin so many times. At the very least, it would be an interesting experience. Saitama approached, cocked back his fist, and released a normal punch directly into Cain's chest. In that same instant, Saitama felt an impossible force applied to his own chest, like an asteroid from deep space colliding with him at several times the speed of sound. While Cain just stood there placid, Saitama was thrown into the nearby wall, shattering the concrete around him and leaving him in a pile of rubble, dazed. Was that what his own punch felt like? After a moment of hesitation, Cain coughed up some blood and exhaled. "That hurt," he said matter-of-factly. Saitama had never felt like this before. The pain throbbed through his entire body. The jangle of his nerves, the disorientation of actually being hit in a way he could feel, feeling his heart pound from the sudden rush of intense adrenaline. And he absolutely loved it. As soon as he was physically able, Saitama stood once more, brushing dust off himself. He squared up into a fighting stance and gritted his teeth. "That's what I'm talking about," he said. "Now let's get consecutive." "All right then," Cain replied, bracing for the pain. "Let's give this a go." Saitama unleashed his consecutive normal punches move, feeling the immense force of the punches colliding with his body as they connected with Cain. It was impossible. It was wonderful. It was a feeling he'd completely forgotten. The glorious, incredible feeling of actually losing a fight. He kept on going, his own supernatural endurance being the only reason he wasn't blown to pieces by the power of his own punches. But he still felt the impossible force of it all. By the time he was satisfied, he needed to be carried out of the room on a stretcher, leaving Cain alone in the room. "Thank you for a good fight," Saitama wheezed as he was carried away to the ICU. Want to catch up on the story? Check out SCP Foundation Contains One Punch Man, Saitama's Big Surprise. And Saitama joins the SCP Foundation. SCP-076 Abel is annoyed. For more.